remember. Where's my agenda?
Okay.
Is everything?
Call roll.
All right, I'd like to ask Jessica to call the roll.
Ms. Bowler?
Here.
Dr. Bradbury?
Here.
Ms. Laredo? Here. Dr. Noland?
Here.
Ms. Prado?
Here.
Dr. Solicito?
Here.
Ms. Berber?
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. First off, I'd love to welcome Maria Salazar-Sperber as our newest public board member, recently appointed by the state Senate. And Maria has been a very productive member of the MDC for a while now and will unfortunately be leaving the MDC to join us here at the board, although she attended yesterday. So that will open up a public position on the MDC that we'll need to notice, and encourage anyone that's watching or listening to consider applying. The MDC is a critical, as you will hear later and throughout our meeting, critical component of the efficient workings of this board. And we're one of the few boards in the country that has such an entity, and we're very reliant on their expertise and their hard work. So thank you, Maria, and welcome to the board. You are welcome. Okay, the first, make sure I have to get the hang of this again after a couple of months off, sorry. Excuse me. The first order on the agenda is public comment of items not on the agenda. And I'd like to, as always, read my little shtick here, that before we open to public comment on matters not on the agenda, I would like to remind everyone again, making comments not to discuss pending complaints, pending licensee applications, or pending disciplinary actions that may later come before the board for a decision. Such discussions are considered ex parte communications, and they could provide information to members that is outside of the record, which is a violation of the Administrative Procedure Act. Accordingly, if an individual makes comments on pending disciplinary matter, the individual's microphone will be muted. So just be careful. The board can, of course, receive comments regarding the board's processes in general, but it cannot receive comments on specific case circumstances where the decision is still pending. The board staff is always available to speak with you on any pending matter outside of this meeting. In addition, public comments should address the board as a whole and not individual members. Please be aware that the public comment during this agenda item should provide information to board members, but is not a discussion between the board members and the public. The only action that we board members can take right now is to listen to comments and decide whether they want we want to fit a future agenda item on that topic. And although this may seem at times like board members are not being responsive, following these DCA guidelines is critical to ensure the rules of the Open Meeting Act are followed and to avoid compromising the speaker's goals or the board's mission. In the interest of time, as we've done in the past, public comment, will be limited to 3 minutes, and we'd like to request public comments not repeat statements previously made. If you are in support of a statement made by a prior commenter, and your comments have already been covered, please just state your name and association and your support for that commenter. Again, right now, we're just hearing public comment on topics not listed on the agenda. During the last 2 board meetings, the board received multiple public comments related to the equine industry. We ask that those comments today, if any, be held until agenda item 6. And now I'd like to move into public comments not on the agenda, and I'll take those, anyone in the room here first, before I ask the moderator to open it to the online callers. In the room, going, on? Okay. All right, moderator, would you please open it up?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment for items not on the agenda, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. If you are a call-in only participant, you can use the raise hand function by pressing *3 on your device. We'll go ahead and get instructions up on the screen in just a moment. And in the meantime, I'll go ahead and pause to allow any members on WebEx to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you very much. Excuse me. I'm sorry to keep moving my mask up and down here. The next item on the agenda is the review and approval of our minutes from the April meeting. And I'd like to turn it over to the board for any comments, amendments, or revisions on those minutes. I'm looking for hands. I did not, by the way, have any changes. Dr. Bradbury.
Good morning, thank you. Let's see, I had a bunch, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Let's see here, I have to pull it up on my screen. So these are all just, I don't know that they're substantive, but these are long minutes. So on page 4, get back up to that, there was Bonnie Lute's comments. Sorry. All right, we're page 4. At the bottom, let's see here, it's kind of towards the middle of the paragraph. Her biggest reason was that even though she does not handle equine cases because of insurance reasons, but a lot of the issues in the letter refer, I think the but just needs to be removed. Are you guys seeing that? I don't know if that matters, but and then page 11, I have so requiring, so the last sentence, it says he advised the board this item will requiring changes to statute. I think it should just be require.
Do you see that, Tara? Because I haven't gotten to that.
The
Last sentence on page 11?
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Thank you. Got it.
Okay. Page 13. If something happens, that didn't make sense to me. It's Bonnie Lutz's, right after Bonnie Lutz Esquire Kleindent's first comment was to address what was questioned about what to do now if something happens. And then she said, she stated they have these regulations and they just do the best they can. I think that I think she's referring to veterinarians there, but, or her clients. I just don't know what that means or if that is what was supposed to be said there. I haven't had a chance to review the video from it.
I will remind everyone that the link here on the name of the individual speaking goes to the live video, so it can be watched directly. Tara,
Yeah, so I don't,
Tara.
So I would say that with respect to clarifying what Bonnie meant by the term they, we don't know, and we don't want to insert words for other people's statements. This is what was said, so I think really the best we can do is just reflect her actual statement at the meeting.
Okay.
And also, I've
was
got
that
a comment.
Said what was questioned about what to do now if something happens?
What?
The first sentence, it says first comment was to address what was questioned about what to do now if something happens. I just don't know if that's what she said. But it
is. I go through and I review and I listen to the webcast, and I think a lot of times people are making comments off the cuff. They don't have a prepared statement. So, you know, when you're reading it out of context, it's difficult to understand what the statement referred to, but this is the best we have.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
think
that's
she's
great.
referring to, you know, probably Dr. Miller's statement of, before hers, but we
I just
want to
wasn't
be
sure.
careful. Okay.
Yeah, not a problem. And then page 20. Sorry, guys. Oh, I'm sorry. Page 17. I think Dr. Solicito said she's. This is under Dr. Solicito. So she stated that there is program. I think it was there is a program. Second sentence under Dr. Solicito at the last part of, yeah. Is a program. I don't know if we need to do all this. I'm sorry. We've just done it in the past. So, and then page 20 under Karen Atlas's comments, kind of the mid, says Ms. Atlas asserted that the board enacted regulatory language which further reduced access to rehab care. And by changed the status quo, I think she said changing, but
Again, if we don't, if this, it could be thereby changed, who knows?
all right.
I think it is just strike
get all
by and changed the status quo.
Okay.
Page 24. That's the last one was just on page 36. Another body loops thing, and maybe I'm the last two sentences. No one plays any games. Oh, I guess it is Pindon. Forget it. It's all good. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. Tara?
Okay, so on page 4, Dr. Bradbury's concern regarding Ms. Lute's statement, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 lines down in that paragraph on the bottom of the page. The concern was, but a lot of the issues in that letter refer to. I think that should be changed to and. I think that sentence will make a lot more sense.
Great. All right. Does anyone else? Dr. Nolan?
This isn't a change in the minutes. I was just wanting to suggest that maybe we take the student liaison attendees and make them, maybe pull them up to the top below our names or somewhere closer. I had to really dig. I knew they were there, but they're kind of buried down in the other guests. And I feel like they, I don't know, maybe deserve to be up where they're a little more highlighted.
No, I should have mentioned that at the beginning. Thank you for reminding me. That is something we did discuss, and they will be moved up, and they'll be moved up on, you know, where we have our other materials as well. So they're right under the board members. But thank you. Anyone else? No? All right, with that, I'll take a motion to approve the minutes as amended today. Do I have a motion?
I'm happy
Yes.
to motion.
Thank you. And a second?
I'll second.
All right, great, thanks. Yeah, and a reminder, it should only be people that were at the meeting in April, right? That was our last meeting voting on this. And now I'll open this to public comment. And I'd like to start with the room again. If there's any public comment on the meeting minutes. Seeing none from the room, moderator, would you open up to the online folks?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel? Oh, I apologize. We do have one request for public comment from Nicole Dickerson. Nicole, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 15-second warning. And I will request to unmute your microphone in just a second. And please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device.
There, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Hi, so
Yes.
I'm sorry, I just have a very small note about the minutes, is that my name was misspelled on page 2. My name is Nicole Dickerson as a guest attending. I think it's currently listed as like a Dickessa, I think is what it says. So I just want to make sure my name was spelled correctly.
I see it. Thank you very much for calling that to our attention.
You bet, thank you very much. That's all I had.
Can I repeat, is it Dickerson?
Correct, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All right, and that is it for requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. All right, now, Jessica, could you call the roll on the vote to adopt the minutes as amended? Or approve the minutes?
And we have the motion by Dr. Noland and second by Dr. Bradbury. We have Ms. Bowler.
Aye.
Dr. Bradbury?
Yes.
Ms. Laredo?
Yes.
Dr. Noland?
Yes.
Ms. Prado?
I think she wasn't here. Oh, she was.
Or can I still,
You should
abstain.
You should abstain.
okay, I abstain.
Dr. Solocito?
Yes.
Ms. Berber?
Abstain.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much. Now we're on number 4 for those following along. And Brian Clifford from DCA is here to give us a report from the department. Welcome.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to provide the Department of Consumer Affairs update today.
Is your mic on?
Can you just speak a little closer?
Is this?
That's
oh,
better.
there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. Good morning, and thank you again for allowing me the opportunity to provide the Department of Consumer Affairs update today. Again, my name is Brian Clifford. I'm with the DCA Executive Office. As you may be aware, the governor recently signed Senate Bill 189 on June 30th, 2022, which reinstitutes through next July 1st the remote meeting provisions of the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act that were in place during the pandemic. The changes took place immediately upon signing. Please be aware that DCA wants you to have the right meeting for your business of your board or bureau, while still taking into consideration both costs and public participation. We're asking boards to still track costs for meetings, even those where there isn't travel, and also use WebEx as much as possible to allow the public to attend remotely, especially as COVID-19 numbers continue to rise. To help track these costs, DCA is asking boards to complete the public meeting survey for your board meetings in order to be able to compare costs for in-person and WebEx meetings, since this legislative change is only in place for this fiscal year. We have distributed the surveys to all boards and bureaus and ask that they be completed within 30 days after each meeting held. Should you have any questions, please reach out to DCA. Though legislation is passed allowing for remote meetings, we are reminding boards that choose to hold in-person meetings of the safety measures, best practices, and recommendations for holding public meetings. When planning for upcoming meetings, please remember all board members and staff are expected to follow the state and local public health guidelines that apply in the area where the meetings are being held. Face coverings are strongly recommended for all board members and staff at meetings. The California Department of Public Health strongly recommends that individuals continue to mask in indoor settings. Please post face covering guidance at your meeting check-in or entrance. And lastly, prior to meeting in person or at a remote location, members need to submit vaccine verification to DCA's Office of Human Resources or be subject to COVID-19 testing. I'd like to provide now an update on the Enlightened licensing project. We're pleased to announce the inaugural report of the Enlightened licensing project is now available and was distributed to all boards and bureaus on Friday, May 13th. This innovative and collaborative project was started to streamline and enhance licensing processes by utilizing the knowledge and expertise of subject matter experts within DCA boards and bureaus. This project was conducted in partnership with the Board of Registered Nursing. After a thorough assessment of some of BRN's licensing processes, the project's co-chairs provided recommendations to introduce new ideas and implement best practices for critical licensing activities. And we'd like to thank your executive officer for serving as one of those co-chairs. DCA held a brown bag event on June 1st to review the recommendations with all boards and bureaus, as we hope the other boards and bureaus can learn from this report and implement recommendations where applicable. We believe it is so important to learn from each other and share our knowledge. We will be turning to enforcement next, and we'll be reviewing the enforcement processes at a board through this enlightenment process, utilizing enforcement subject matter experts. DCA also recently held a brown bag meeting with executive officers and bureau chiefs on July 5th to roll out changes to DCA's regulation development and approval process. These changes were also discussed and approved by DCA's executive officer and bureau chief cabinet. DCA shared documentation on the process and changes with all boards and bureaus. DCA is pleased to announce that Nicole Lay was hired on June 24th as the Deputy Director of DCA's Office of Administrative Services. With more than 20 years of state service experience, Nicole has dedicated 10 of those years to DCA, most recently serving as Acting Deputy Director of OAS, where she was responsible for overseeing the business functions of Human Resources, Fiscal Operations, and the Business Services Office. Prior to this role, Nicole was Chief of DCA's Office of Human Resources. She also previously served the Contractor State License Board in the Department of Motor Vehicles. We're very excited to have her as part of DCA's executive leadership team. It is with sadness, though, that we announced some transitions within our Board and Bureau Relations unit. Carrie Holmes, Deputy Director of Board and Bureau Relations, left DCA on May 13th. Additionally, Brianna Miller has accepted another position and left DCA on June 10th. DCA appreciates the support and services Brianna and Carrie have provided to all of our boards and bureaus. They have been a huge asset to the department. I'd like to assure you, though, that during this transitionary period, DCA's Executive Office and our Board and Bureau Relations teams will continue to ensure the continuity of services to all boards and bureaus. If you need anything at all, please contact the DCA Member Relations email or call DCA's Executive Office directly. The department was recently advised by the State Controller's Office that there will be a delay in the processing and approval of travel expense claims until the end of July due to setting up the new fiscal year budget in the Fiscal system. We appreciate your patience and claims will be processed as quickly as they can be once we are able to use the system again. And lastly, I'd like to update you on a couple of meetings and trainings. DCA will be holding its summer board leadership meeting on June 26th. These quarterly meetings are attended by board presidents and vice presidents, executive officers, and DCA leaders, and provide the opportunity to discuss important and emerging issues as a group. If you have any suggested agenda items for this upcoming meeting, please send them to DCA's Member Relations email. And lastly, board members are required to complete board member orientation training within 1 year of appointment and reappointment. The final training of 2022 will be offered on October 12th. Members can register through DCA's Learning Management System, or LMS. BMOT is required for all newly appointed and reappointed members, but is available as a refresher for any members and executive officers. Again, please reach out to DCA's Member Relations email if you have any questions. And as always, DCA is here to help, and if there's anything we can do to assist, please just let us know. And
thank you very much. Couple things. Congratulations to Nicole Lee. She has been, on my term on the board, so helpful to us and so responsive on HR and our annual evaluation of our EO, et cetera, et cetera. So we're sorry to lose her, but I know there'll be somebody taking her place that's equally great. And I also want to thank you for doing those leadership meetings, the one coming up. I've attended most of them. I think Dr. Bradbury has attended a lot of them too, and they're extremely helpful for board presidents, new presidents, and ongoing presidents. So they're very useful, so thank you. Do any other members of the committee, the board here, have any questions for Brian? And then or up above. And I see Dr. Bradbury's hand up. So
Hi,
go
Brian.
ahead.
Thanks for the update. I think that I'm not sure if you're the person we would ask about this, but I was just wondering about our executive officers review and how that's going.
I'll turn it to Brian, but I also have something to say about that during my president's report. But Brian, I'm not sure if you have anything on this.
Unfortunately, I don't have any updated information. I think that's in process, so. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, the board is anxiously awaiting. Any other questions for Brian before I open it to the public? No, from the board? All right. Any members of the public here in the room? And I'm not seeing people running up to the mic, so I'm going to now turn it over to the moderator, if you wouldn't mind opening to the online folks.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Well, thank you, Brian, very much. And thanks to DCA and your team. Now we'll move to number 5 on the agenda, which is a report from Dr. Dick Sullivan and the MDC. And again, thank you very much for all your work that you Dr. Sullivan, and the entire MDC do on our behalf.
Thank you. Okay, our meeting started a few minutes after 1 p.m. yesterday, and we did not have an extended agenda, so we just had a half day. After roll call was established, established a quorum, we asked for comments about items not on the agenda, and there were none. The minutes were approved after being amended to clarify the use of the term MDC instead of board in several cases. Agenda item 5 was discussion and recommendations to the board regarding pending rulemaking proposal to amend multiple sections of the code related to approving RVT educational programs. This rulemaking package has been going through OAL line for some time. The first job of the subcommittee that was assigned to review the pending RVT education rulemaking package was to see if additional amendments should be made. Over the years, there were multiple amendments to 10 sections of the regs, including issues related to accreditation by AVMA, RVT alternate route review and approval, and amendments regulating and defining the parameters of supervision of RVT students. All of these issues and more were discussed over a 2-year period, and since they were all related to RVT issues, it was put into one huge package. In August 2018, the board approved this RVT package, and on July 10th, 2020, the rulemaking was approved by the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency to proceed with publication of the rulemaking with the Office of Administrative Law for a 45-day public comment period. During the July 2020 board meeting, the board's executive officer requested and the board approved additional amendments to strike language that expired the educational and clinical experience and prohibited the educational experience from being completed in no less than 24 months. It was noted those requirements are unnecessary for consumer protection. They serve as a significant barrier to licensure and are incredibly burdensome for applicants and the board staff. The subcommittee does not believe the rulemaking package should continue to proceed until the subcommittee has time to review it entirely. However, there are two components that are time sensitive and need to proceed. Therefore, at your next meeting, the MDC will forward to the board the recommendations to, number one, retain the addition of new section 2036.1 regarding animal health care tasks for RVT students, and two, remove all of Article 6 proposed amendments except for the amendments to section 2068.5C that strikes, and I quote, all educational requirements in subsection A shall have been completed by applicant within 5 years prior to the date of the examination for registration as a registered veterinary technician. In other words, that section is going to be removed. And then also in section F, the words in the first sentence that states, and I quote, completed in no less than 24 months. And the last sentence, unquote, in the last sentence in that section that says, this experience shall have been completed by the applicant within 5 years prior to the date of the examination for registration as a registered veterinary technician. So therefore, therefore, moving forward with the RVT educational rulemaking package comprised of only those two regulatory sections, and you'll be receiving them at the next meeting. Agenda item 6 was an update, discussion, and potential recommendations of the board related to veterinary compounding in a clinical setting. At our last meeting, we found numerous gaps in the paper trail from when the formula is put into a master formula list and when it becomes either office stock or dispensed to a client. We did pass a motion to recommend to the board to propose legislation to amend Business and Professional Code Section 4826.5 to authorize a veterinary assistant controlled substance permit holder to perform drug compounding. This will greatly alleviate the workforce issue that clinics presently face with the requirement that only veterinarians or an RVT can compound a drug preparation and still provide consumer protection. I want to qualify that by saying what we're talking about is very, very simple compounding. We're not talking about anything complex, and a veterinarian will be supervising this process. And we did make progress in exempting compounded IV fluid administration from duplicative paperwork, since this will also be documented in the patient's medical records. It still needs some more work. However, we couldn't agree on much else. So back to the drawing board with a couple of ideas already in the thought process. We had some great discussions with the goal of making this process as efficiently as possible that will still allow veterinarians to do basic compounding in their practices on an everyday basis. Agenda item 7 was an update from the Complaint Process Audit Subcommittee. Dr. Sequoia updated the MDC on the fact that the subcommittee is again reviewing cases that are more current and giving feedback to the experts in a timelier fashion. Prior reviews were based on old cases where many of the deficiencies of the experts were already corrected. Although Dr. Sequoia is new in the subcommittee, Dr. Bradbury commented that she is already seeing improvement in avoiding problematic language and better focus on the cases. The subcommittee is also working on real-life examples for expert witness training. Our last item on the agenda was a list of future meeting and assignments, which you also have on your agenda, and you will be making adjustments to that from time to time. That is the end of my report, and are there any questions?
I'd like to clarify, on our agenda, there are line items under the report with potential recommendations for action items today. And I just want to clarify for myself and for the public, are there recommendations that we need to take action on today from MDC?
Yes, I thought there are separate items that we.
Do you want to go through those one at a time?
Yeah.
Perfect. I just wanted to double check.
You can decide whether you want to take action on them right then or do it.
All right. Terrific. So that was just your overview of the meeting yesterday.
Yes.
Thank you. I knew you couldn't be finished with your whole report, so. All right. Sorry about that. Does anyone have questions, Dr. Sullivan, on the initial overview of yesterday's meeting? And I know a number of us were either on the on the committee or present at the meeting. So I'm looking to Dr. Nolan and Diana and Dr. Bradbury, and I don't see any hands raised by board members. So I'll now open it to the public. So do you want to do questions in public on each part of the report? What's the most efficient way?
You could do it all at once. You're going to definitely have to do it
To do it on each action item?
for each motion. So you could do it now, or you can wait until the whole item is done and then take public comment on anything outside of the motions.
Why don't we do it now on the overview of your meeting, and then we'll do each motion one at a time. Is there anyone in the public with a comment on this particular part of Dr. Sullivan's presentation? No, and then I'll go to the moderator to see if there's anyone online.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. It looks like we do have one individual who has requested public comment, Anita Levy-Hudson. And Ms. Hudson, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 15-second warning. Please click the unmute me button when the prompt appears on your device. Ms. Hudson, I'm going to request to unmute your microphone again. If you can please click the unmute me button. All right, you are unmuted.
Wonderful, thank you. Hi, this is Anita Levy-Hudson. I'm the president of the California Registered Veterinary Technicians Association, and I want to extend my thank you, as always, for allowing public comment on such issues that affect all of us. I wanted to make a comment regarding the compounding by individuals with a VACSP. This definitely is a big concern for us, as it should be for every veterinary technician that is here. We work very hard to be recognized for our competencies and our skills, and we go through such lengths such as obtaining state licensure and education to prove those. With the VACSP, I understand that you're speaking about potentially simple compounding. However, everything ultimately is kind of under the guise or under the purview of the veterinarian that's supervising. But I would like to mention that this is not something that, for me, provides a guarantee that this is a good idea. I don't know the last time that a veterinarian supervised a person making a compound in a hospital. Let's remember that direct supervision means that they're in the building, not necessarily actually observing what's happening. And my and our concern is that this permit provides that person has no previous drug convictions or anything that would be super obvious to not allow them to handle controlled substances. It does not provide any kind of training. And when we're talking about compounding, even simple things like Clavamux, for example, the difference between 14 mLs and 16 mLs is going to greatly change your concentration. And what we're using the compound is also going to be in question. Is it tap water? Do you want sterile water? These kinds of things are all covered for us in our education. They are not covered for people that have not gone through that and do not have very, very clear-cut, regimented, and standardized training in hospitals. So this is something that we are definitely very concerned about and wanted to be sure to voice our concerns to you. And as you go forward in discussing the details of this, we definitely would like to participate in that if possible. Thank you again.
Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. Appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you very much. All right, turning it back over to you, Dr. Sullivan, for your item 5B, or A. B, I guess we're on B, sorry.
All right, thank you. 5B, your agenda item, is amending board guidelines related to discussion of cannabis. The MDC does not have a recommendation regarding board guidelines for veterinary discussion of cannabis with clients at this time. You can see from the subcommittee's recommendation to the MDC why we did not think that we needed to amend the guidelines yet. Number one, since hemp CBD is an over-the-counter product, there is no need or legal precedent requiring the board to establish guidelines for it. If a client files a complaint against a licensee about a recommendation for the use of hemp CBD product, the board will approach the case as it would any other OTC product. Number two, the subcommittee reviewed AB 1885, which is still moving through the California State Legislature, and believes that it's premature to write guidelines related to this bill. If the bill also states that if passed, the board has until January 21st, 2024 to write those guidelines. So at this time, we have no recommendation on that agenda item.
All right, thank you. I think I guess most efficient is to go through these probably. There's no recommendation, so we don't need to do that. When we do have a recommendation, then we'll open it up for comment. Oh, Dr. Bradbury, sorry.
Hi, thanks. Thanks, Dr. Sullivan. I just wanted to mention or say I've recently received some questions from practitioners regarding CBD, and I was just wondering if we might want to, Jessica, put in something about it in the next newsletter about it being an over-the-counter product, and that, just something kind of explaining that versus a whole, set of recommendations. It might be worthwhile to have something that the general practitioners have in a newsletter, because not everybody goes to these meetings, and so I think it's maybe still unclear whether it's even okay for them to use CBD. So I just wondered if that was something we might want to do or could do.
Yeah, we can use a lot of the justification that's in this memo and put it into a newsletter article for the newsletter. So that's definitely something we can do. I do want to mention there's a typo on page 2. It's not until January 21st, 2024. It's January 1st, 2024. So I apologize for that.
Yeah.
Anyone else on the board have questions on this particular part of the report? I wonder if I should should I open it to public since we're doing it this way now? Okay. I will open this part of the report to public comment from the room here. And now nothing in the room, so moderator, if you wouldn't mind opening it up.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. All right, Dr. Sullivan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Agenda item 5C, recommendations to revise the VCPR frequently asked questions. In your packet, you have the proposed changes to question 6, and I will only add that we will be addressing the issue of rabies vaccinations being classified as a dangerous drug and requiring a VCPR to be given in a subsequent agenda item. I'm not sure how you want to do this, whether this needs to be read for the record or how you want to handle this.
So you're saying that you're going to continue discussing the rabies vaccine question being asked, added to the VCPRs?
We'll be addressing that in another agenda item today.
Oh, yes, that's true.
Okay, so I don't know how you want to enter this in the record, if it already is, or whether it has to be read.
So the materials are all posted. So you could either, there's a motion on the action requested. So the board can either propose that motion now, or they can discuss the additional question that you want to add to the FAQs. It's up to what the board wants.
And just to clarify, the FAQ is number?
So the proposal is to add question 6 to the FAQs, and the question is a VCPR required to administer vaccinations? And we're requesting that this be answered because our staff get this question a lot, and it's not a yes, no, it's more complicated than that. And so we had asked the MDC to add this question.
All right, so that is a proper motion before the board to revise the FAQs to task the MDC with answering that question.
Yeah, so we would just need someone to make the motion to read it from the action requested on page 2.
Do I have a motion from anyone on the board to add that question? We're talking about adding the question and having MDC devise the answer. I'll make the motion if no one else is. This is the motion.
Yeah, so on page 2 under action requested.
Right here.
We're asking to please entertain a motion to revise the VCPR FAQs to include the vaccination question number 6 in answer, and post the revised VCPR FAQs on the board's website. Dr. Nolan has a question.
Dr. Nolan?
Yes, I just want to clarify, this is just basically adding this question to the frequently asked questions document that we have. And I frankly, and this may just be me, so I apologize, but when you add the wording, however, this is on the small animal vaccine clinic. However, administration of a vaccination that is a dangerous drug defined under BPC number 422. So I went to BPC, or the 422, and it's not very clear. So as a practicing veterinarian, can we add just a statement saying currently this applies to rabies vaccines at this point? I mean, it's something to clarify it a little bit more. I know that, it's not like we're putting it in regulation or statute or anything, but it's just not all that clear. I mean, it's a kind of legalese to me. And I feel like if we're trying to answer a question, I'm not sure we're really answering the question very clearly for practitioners. I don't know, maybe that's just me. I'd love to hear other comments.
Dr. Salcido?
Yes. The way that I understand it's written is it's actually stipulating what the exemptions are. I mean, in general, we do recognize that the VCPR is needed, but just defining when the exemptions are going to be applied. I think that's why I think it's important that we add this, this additional question in the FAQs to make it clear.
Absolutely
Dr.
right.
Nolan.
I'm not arguing that we shouldn't add it. I'm just asking if maybe we can even make it more clear. I think we're changing the wording. It's now no longer small animal vaccination clinic, but we've changed that wording also, right? So I think it is really a good idea to add this question. Yeah, it's now location, but I'm just saying, could we make it even a little more clear, saying, right now that means if you're going to give a rabies vaccine, you know, that's the only vaccine that we're talking about that's a dangerous drug right now. It just seems like we could clarify it a little bit.
Dr. Bradbury.
I agree with Dr. Nolan. I feel like we're trying to you know, make things as simple and straightforward as possible, and there is only one vaccine that's considered a dangerous drug at the moment without the exemption. And so I would agree that referring them to having to look up the Business and Professions Code in order to understand what it says is not very helpful. So if we could instead insert rabies vaccine, and maybe with a qualifier that this is related to that Business and Professions Code, would be more helpful.
Diana Prado, Ms. Prado.
Yes, thank you. So in looking at the Business and Professions Code, what I'm guessing is the rabies vaccine does have what the Business and Profession Codes state is dangerous. Like it's a prescription that says this is dangerous. And what I'm hearing from you all is that that is the only vaccine currently that veterinarians use that has that description that is in the Business and Professions Code. So I think that would be helpful. I think we need to keep the Business and Professions Code, and then if there's an added sentence, it would be like exactly that. At this moment, the only, in order for it to be helpful for veterinarians, I just also don't want to, like, I mean, that's the definition, is the Business and Professions Code, right? I mean, the definition is the definition. It just so happens that rabies is the only one at this moment. And so I think that if we're having these FAQs and we have like the date that they're revised and updated, it would be helpful to have that like qualifying statement afterwards. At this moment, I mean, and I don't know, and then I defer to
Wait till we're here.
for the rest, but I would think that, you know, would be helpful. But I also don't want to take out the Business and Professions Code because that's the definition of what is, and then it's only that rabies one. That makes sense to me. Kind of just saying what you all said again.
Jessica, do you have something?
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify, we're not talking about only rabies. It's administration of vaccination that is a dangerous drug. That's for any dangerous drug, but you can say including rabies vaccinations, but we're not talking about only rabies.
And I think, for me, I think we might be getting a little ahead of ourselves. Part of this recommendation is just to add the question to the FAQs. That's what's before us right now.
Actually modify, the question is already there. This is to.
No, this one is not. This one is adding the whole question.
Yeah.
Right.
And then, but not defining the answer, just adding the question right now is what's before the board.
Well, and the answers.
Well, and the answers will be.
So the whole thing that we're requesting to add is the question and the proposed answer that comes after it. And this is just based on existing law. So it's not adding any more requirements. It's not making anything more stringent. This is just what current law says.
Tara.
May I suggest revising the answer for small animal vaccination clinic? Line 4. After 4022 end paren, insert comma, which would include rabies vaccination, comma. That way, it clarifies for the general public and potentially veterinary assistants or whomever may be administering these that a rabies vaccination is a dangerous drug, but leaves open interpretation of a dangerous drug to all of the other potential vaccinations that would fall into that definition.
Dr. Nolan?
Thank you. I like that, but I would comment back to Jessica's statement about all dangerous drugs, because this is very specific. You mentioned vaccination in the first sentence, you mentioned vaccination in the second. So in no way when I read it, do I feel like it's also including all dangerous drugs. We're really talking about vaccinating animals. So I do agree with Diana. The only vaccination right now that is a dangerous drug is rabies. So I think if you add after the BPC 4022, the statement that Tara said, can we add another few words saying currently applying to rabies vaccination only, something to make it clear that that really is the only vaccination right now that we're talking about.
So there's, just to clarify, there's no other vaccination that requires a prescription?
There is.
I'm not sure.
So then that also would apply. So anything that requires
There
a
is.
prescription essentially is a dangerous drug.
Yeah, if you
Not in
don't,
small
I
animal,
was
but I'm not sure about large animal.
But again,
was-
this is talking about small animal, right?
Okay.
I mean,
So is it okay if I'm sorry, there was that question and I was thinking about it, and there's melanoma vaccines, there's a new osteosarcoma vaccine. So there are, and I know this is in a preventative setting and at vaccination clinics, but after thinking about it, because I was trying, after Jessica said that, like what other vaccines could be, dangerous drugs used in small animals. And there are some, I suppose, preventative vaccines would be a different thing, but I think Tara's wording would be acceptable to me, because I guess there are these other types of vaccines that are used in a different manner. So I don't know.
Tara.
Your other option is to include, the actual definition of what a dangerous drug is. So that way people don't have to, go separately to, click on the link, but it's all contained in one document. So it's clear that a dangerous drug is either by prescription or veterinarian use only. I don't have the definition in front of me, but you could just list the definition itself right behind. I mean, it adds more words. I'm not sure if that really helps, but it could, if that's what you're trying to get at, just really establishing clear guidance, while also making sure that dangerous drug could include a whole host of other vaccinations that we're not thinking about right now that either require a prescription or are veterinarian use only. So do you want to add the actual definition of dangerous drug in this answer?
So my only concern with that, because when we post this, it would do a link right to what the law says. My concern about quoting directly from the law is the whole intent of these FAQs is to say it more in layman's terms and not legalese, but the more that we quote directly from it, it kind of defeats the purpose of putting it into an FAQ. That's my only concern.
Jennifer, Ms. Laredo.
This might be going into the next item, but I think the question here is actually the small animal vaccine clinic. Since this is an FAQ, couldn't we put this does not include DHPP, FVRCP, the ones that are going to specifically be questioned? Just simplify it even further.
Is that going to be like a really long list, or just
I would think like 3 or 4 vaccines.
I'm looking at Jessica too, because
it's yours, Paul.
Well, I'm just wondering if you need to reread.
Questioning our DVMs on the board.
Or Dr. Sullivan.
I think the wording that has been proposed is adequate. We are talking primarily of rabies vaccines, and if you want to spell that out, I think that's perfectly fine and accomplishes what we're after.
So you're referring to the proposal that Tara did when she said add, which includes the rabies vaccination?
Correct.
After you're using BPC 4022.
Correct.
That's where you're putting that. I just want to make it clear for everyone.
Right, so it's 4022 in paren, insert comma, which would include rabies vaccination, comma.
Requires a VCP, blah, blah, blah.
Yes. So if you wanted to do a list of other vaccinations this would not apply to, I would recommend discussing this further with like the board subject matter experts and inspection unit to, get their input on this as well, because they're the ones who, are on the ground and have the best idea of what they see in practice. But if you want to move forward with this FAQ today, I think you could just add that small insertion regarding rabies vaccination, and then you could, if you wanted, send it back to the MDC for further discussion as to whether or not a list of vaccinations that aren't included under that is necessary. I just wouldn't add any additional list right now because I'm sure you're going to miss something.
Dr. Nolan.
Is it appropriate at this time to actually make a motion including Tara's amendment to this, or have we done that already?
I don't think so. I think it would be appropriate to clarify a motion, and then we'll take public comment, et cetera.
Okay, so I guess I would like to, if it's okay with you, make a motion to add the vaccination question and answer described above with the amendment that was suggested in the parentheses after BPC 4022 to include rabies vaccination. And so revise the Vcpr FAQs to include the vaccination question number 6 and answer, and post the revised Vcpr FAQs on the board's website. Did I get that right?
That's pretty good. Do I have a second? Thank you. Dr. Bradbury, second. All right. Any discussion from the board before we go to, more discussion from the board before we go to public comment? I see none. All right. And I'll open it to folks in the room here for public comment on this particular motion. All right, moderator, seeing no one in the room, could you open it online?
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click that Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and it looks like we do have one individual who has requested public comment, Bonnie Lutz. And Bonnie, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 15-second warning. I will request to unmute your microphone now. All right, and you are unmuted.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. Okay, so can you hear me? Yes, I guess so. I'm seeing some smiles. Okay, my only comment regarding this is that I'm getting a lot of questions about this, as you can imagine. And I understand that you want to be technically correct. My comment would be, why don't we look at the vaccines that are usually administered at a small animal vaccine clinic? And because, adding that information about Business and Professions Code 4022, I mean, the people reading these responses, I'm getting a lot of questions. And then when I have to read to them what 4022 says, that causes even more confusion. So in addition to what Tara said, maybe, can we add what vaccines we usually do administer at a small animal vaccine clinic rather than potentially adding ones that could fall under 4022? I think that's just more confusing. I mean, if you can keep it, the whole thing would be to keep it as simple as possible so that somebody reading this knows exactly what they're dealing with. Because these small animal clinics, I mean, as far as I know, they don't provide vaccines to any of these exotic other diseases and things that Dr. Bradbury was referring to. So, I mean, that's just my comment because I am getting a lot of questions about this and there's a lot of confusion.
Thank you, Bonnie.
All right, this is the moderator. It looks like we do have a request, another request for comment. Anita Levy Hudson. And Anita, I will request to unmute your microphone. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak in a 15-second warning.
Hi there again. Thank you for letting me ask my question. I also receive a lot of questions about this through social media and other contact methods through CARVDA regarding responsibilities and duties and what they're allowed to do with a VACSP. And typically my answer has always standardly been just that it has to do with the controlled drugs. The VACSP, as I understood it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, does not dictate competency, even when we're talking about vaccines. I understand that this whole question is kind of geared towards the vaccination clinics, where it is a really fast process and it's a very simple task to have somebody give a vaccination. But it has definitely, I just wanted to definitely let you know that those are the kinds of questions that I'm receiving as well. And that when I answer them, I basically, there is nothing about the VSCSP that tells that person what they're allowed or capable to do. Those things have already been dictated in the terms of what tasks are restricted to RVTs and doctors. And then there is the rest, which is this large void, which we are, it seems, trying to fill in with the VACSP. So as we're thinking about what text and language to use, please understand that it's coming from people that are potentially being asked to do a lot of things at work that they may or may not be trained or comfortable doing, and they're looking for something to back them up. Sometimes they look at these things not just to see what they can do, but to see what they're restricted from doing so that they don't have to be in a situation where they have to refuse a task at work for fear of repercussions. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. It appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. I have a question about on the answers here under shelter setting and small animal, where it says prophylactic or non-prescription vaccinations. Trying to respond to a comment about listing what the typical vaccinations are, which I know the more we list things, even with such as or whatever, the more confusing this may end up getting. But does preventative or prophylactic non-prescription vaccinations cover the typical vaccines that are done at a clinic, which I would assume it would? Distemper, the usual, without having to list them out. I'm wondering, that language seems okay to me, but I'm asking the vets in the room. Ms. Laredo, you're a doctor now.
I like this promotion I got.
Yeah, cool.
It's not exactly an answer to that question, but I will say, I'll restate my suggestion that there are those few vaccines that the small animal practitioners are focusing on. And with everybody saying they're getting a lot of questions, I get those questions too. And I've been with this board for 8 years, so I'm just now starting to understand some of this language, but the average person reading this doesn't. And I think simplifying it is the easiest. Anybody who's in a shelter, anybody who's in a small animal practice, reading these FAQs, wondering about small animal vaccination clinics, obviously rabies is going to be a big one, but they're going to be wondering about those other vaccines. And as Bonnie stated, if we could list the ones that are commonly given, and I think it's going to be 3 or 4. Dr. Solicito would be the expert on that, but it's not a long list of vaccinations. It's just a few. I think it would make it a lot easier for clarity for anybody, any layperson reading this information.
All right, thank you. Dr. Bradbury.
To answer your question, I think that wording does cover it. The wording you discussed, the non-prescription, preventative, or prophylactic vaccinations, but I do like the idea of listing the one. I know that makes it more complicated, I guess, but I don't think it's very many, and there's, I think, two other ones for cats and maybe 2 to 3, I guess, with the flu too. But anyway, I think that Dr. Solicito would be a great resource for that. And I don't think that would be that difficult, but I could be wrong.
Oh, let me just comment on the types of vaccines that we give. We normally focus on what we call the core vaccines. However, I think if we list those vaccines, there would be situations wherein there would be like an outbreak, and there would be like the canine influenza.
Right.
That's not something that, normally vaccine clinics would offer, but in situations where we need to make sure that it is being provided, in the exemptions, I think those should be included. So, yeah, I think, I don't know if identifying the specific vaccines would, kind of put us in a situation where we're limiting it to like the ones that we think should be given at this point in time. But what about in situations of outbreaks?
All right.
Perhaps you could move forward with the FAQ and answer and include another amendment to the language for small animal vaccination clinic, line 2, where it says can administer vaccinations. You could insert comma such as, and there list the most common vaccinations that can be administered without establishing a Vcpr. That way you better identify what can be properly administered. However, I don't feel comfortable, would not recommend just inserting a bunch of vaccinations today. I think perhaps you could, in that motion, provide authority for board staff to work with perhaps Dr. Solicito to list the most commonly used vaccinations right there, and then post it once you have that list. And I would also recommend that board staff include the inspection unit.
Thank you. Dr. Nolan.
I would be happy to amend my motion. I'm not quite sure how to word that, but I would be happy to do it. But I would say that I agree that the more, if we can give some examples of the most commonly used vaccinations, we will reduce the number of questions that are being asked to probably questions regarding certain vaccines like the influenza that are showing up because of outbreaks. But at least for the common questions, it would probably common vaccines, it would reduce the number of questions that you're getting and be more clear to practitioners. So I think I would be in favor of adding some of the more common ones, again, using the words for example, or something that kind of makes sure that they understand it's an example. But I'm happy to put wording in there. Tara, help me put wording in there to work with Dr. Solicito and board staff to come up with the list of examples to insert, something like that.
Thank you. I agree. Tara, do you have a wordsmithing?
Okay, so right now, the motion is to revise the Vcpr FAQs to include the vaccination question number 6 and answer as amended, to add under small animal vaccination clinic line 2 after the word vaccinations, insert comma such as, and list the most common vaccinations. And then in line 4, after 4022 and paren, insert comma, which would include rabies vaccination, comma, and post the revised Vcpr FAQs on the board's website.
I think the only addition is such as to be followed by input from Dr. Salcido, board staff, et cetera, to list the several vaccines that'll be included there. And that, once they're listed, does not need to come back to us the way we're framing this motion. All right. Just wanted to clarify that.
So, Dr. Nolan, you amended the motion. Dr. Bradbury, do you agree with that amendment? Because you were the second.
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
I think all this discussion is, the whole point of these FAQs is to clarify and make this more understandable to practitioners that are very busy, and to help the board with questions that they normally get on the phone or in writing. And so I think the more we can clarify without locking ourselves in, I think is going to be better for the profession and for the public. So I'm glad I think this discussion was productive today on this subject. Jennifer.
I just wanted to add one more thing. It's not just the practitioners, because we are consumer, protection. There are a lot of staff. I'm not going to say people off the street, but I will say staff that are working in hospitals that maybe don't understand all of this, and they just want to be sure that they're following the rules. So if we make it easier for everybody to read, it's in everybody's best interest.
That's exactly right. All right. So that is the motion before us. As written, as amended, and before, I guess we should go back to public comment because we've amended that, so I'd like to open it to folks in the room. Do you have any comment on the motion before us regarding adding question number 6 and an answer? And I'm not even going to repeat the motion. I don't see anyone in this room, so Dr. Moderator, now I've promoted you to, everybody's a doctor. Woo.
I didn't realize I got my doctorate.
Yeah, congrats.
This is the moderator.
Open it up.
Yeah. At the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, you can use the Q&A feature or use the raise hand function. And it looks like I do have a request from Bonnie Lutz again. Bonnie, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 15-second warning. I will request to unmute your microphone now.
Okay, thank you. This will just be very short. I think that's great. I think it's a great way to handle this. And I do understand what Dr. Salicito is getting at. However, as long as we're aware of the fact that you're not limiting those vaccines in your statement, that when there is an outbreak or something and we get that question, we know how to answer that. It will make it a lot clearer for people who are putting on these small animal vaccine clinics. So I think it's great. I know you spent a lot of time on this, but I think it'll make everything a lot easier for everybody to understand. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Bonnie, it looks like you have your hand raised again. Let me go ahead and request. Oh, never mind. I guess it was by accident. In that case, it appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you. And if there's no further discussion from board members, I think we can move to a vote. Turn it over to
Ms. Bowler?
Jessica. Aye.
Dr. Bradbury?
Yes.
Ms. Laredo?
Yes.
Dr. Nolan? Ms. Prado?
Yes.
Dr. Salicito?
Yes.
Ms. Berber?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Sullivan, back to you. I think we're on 5D, right?
5D.
5D.
Recommendations on proposed amendments to Section 2030.3 related to small animal vaccination clinics, and Section 2032.1 related to the Vcpr. I found out this morning that there are some concerns with what we have done with 2030.3. So I guess the request is to hold off on that until we get some, I guess maybe refer it back to the MDC for further clarification. However, I would like to move forward with 2032.1 related to the Vcpr. And that is because that comes back to allowing the rabies vaccine to be exempt from the Vcpr, so we can comply with state mandated a state mandated law that all municipalities, all local governments provide low-cost rabies vaccination clinics for public health protection. So the addition to the Vcpr of 2032.1, at the end of it, it would add, or rabies vaccinations are given in the interest of protecting public health.
Thank you. Do we have any comments from the board on that? And I think you'll explain why you're holding off on the others, or Jessica, you will. Oh, Tara, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just a point of clarification. The small animal vaccination clinic regulation, the revisions to that are part of the alternate premises rulemaking, which the board approved a while back, but the regulations unit has identified some substantive concerns with that rulemaking itself. So we think that the board should send the alternate premises rulemaking back to the MDC for further discussion and potential revisions to address the regulations unit concerns. And so that's why the board is not asked to review CCR section 2030.3 at this time, but likely we'll review it later once the alternate premises rulemaking comes back to the board for review.
And that was the explanation I was looking for on that. Do we need to make a motion to add that, put that back in the NBC court, the alternate premises, or is it going to be there automatically because they're returning it to us with their questions?
No, I would say you don't need a motion to return it to the MDC, but you as board president can send it back to add to the MDC assignment.
Well, consider it added then.
Thank you.
Oh, you're so welcome, Dr. Sullivan. So back to 2032.1, adding that language at the end regarding the rabies vaccinations. I'm looking to the board members before I open it for any other discussion or questions for Dr. Sullivan. Oops, sorry. Seeing none, I would like to open it to the public in the room here.
Just to clarify, though, because I think Dr. Sullivan was still asking for the board to approve adding the phrase "or rabies vaccinations are given in the interest of public health." So if someone can make that motion, and then we can open it up to public comment.
I'm sorry, I forgot the motion. Minor detail. Oh, Dr. Sullivan, do you have something to add?
I forgot to add. I have already discussed this issue with the Veterinary Public Health Department in California, and they have agreed to the need of this change.
That's very good information. Thank you. Dr. Nolan.
I was just going to go ahead and make that motion, since I don't have the verbiage in front of me to read. I would like to make a motion to adopt the wording "or rabies vaccinations are given in the interest of protecting public health" to 2032.1 last sentence.
Thank you. Oh, Tara.
The actions requested include a little bit more for that CCR section. The request is also to include this change in the board's VCPR and veterinary and client-patient relationship informed consent rulemaking, and instruct staff to proceed with the rulemaking process.
And also to strike "or." I forgot the "or" in the second to the last sentence. So can we add Tara's verbiage and striking the "or"?
Striking "or."
Yes.
Oh, I see.
Out the word "or."
Right.
And add the phrase.
And do we have a second to the motion and the appended motion?
I second the motion.
Thank you, Dr. Salcido. All right, now we can move to public comment on this particular item, on the motion. And I'm opening it to this room, and I see no one in the room rushing the mic. So, Moderator, would you please open it up to the online?
This is the moderator at the direction of the board. I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen or use the raise hand function. I do have a request from Nancy Eierlich, and Nancy, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 15-second warning. I will request to unmute your microphone now.
I have a question about the wording of or when rabies vaccinations are given in the interest of protecting public health. Is that meant to be a specific situation, or isn't rabies vaccination always given in the interest of public health? So I think that wording is not clear. Is it meant to be just at a rabies vaccination clinic, or every time a rabies vaccination is administered?
Dr. Sullivan? Oh, well, I know we're just listening to, thank you, Nancy. We'll move on to the rest of the public comment before we talk about that.
All right, this is the moderator. Appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. And while we're still in, back to the board for discussion, Dr. Sullivan, would you like to clarify anything on the language?
Well, I think that was added because we are giving a reason why we're asking for an exemption from a very important part of our Practice Act, which is the Vcpr. So it's not just to exempt rabies vaccinations, but to say why we're exempting them. And I think all rabies vaccinations are given for the interest of public health, whether it's in a private practice or in a vaccine clinic or at a shelter. So I think it's just to kind of clarify why we're putting it in the Vcpr.
Thank you. I'm not sure there'd be any, but you could say which are always given in the interest of protecting public health, but I don't know that that's necessary. But looking at Tara or anyone.
I don't know if that's on. How do I click it? Yeah, green. Okay. Hi, I'm Karen Halbo, the Regulations Counsel, and it is putting in the reasoning, and it doesn't restrict the language you're adding, so it's not problematic. If you discover you get a lot of questions on it, it seems like you can answer it in some FAQs if you need to, but putting it in there is a part of kind of defending the sanctity of the VCPR. So I would not encourage you to remove that language.
Right, and I wasn't suggesting that we would remove it. It is crucial to in there. I was just clarifying it, if we needed to clarify it. And I'm not even sure we do, because it is always a matter of public health. All right, any other discussion? We have a motion and a second on the floor before we move to a vote. All right, Jessica?
Ms. Bowler?
Aye.
Dr. Bradbury?
Yes.
Ms. Laredo?
Yes.
Dr. Noland?
Yes.
Ms. Prado?
Yes. Yes.
Dr. Solicito?
Yes.
Ms. Berber?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Sullivan.
Okay, item 5E is related to recommendations regarding veterinary drug compounding guidance. After yesterday's conversation, I was hesitant to bring this forward today, but I have been encouraged to do so from the simple fact that what is in your packet today is what is in the law today. And so we're putting this somewhat limited education material out there to satisfy what is in the law right now, including the example of the formula, what I call the master formula or the formula form, which makes it a little clearer on what to be expected. So the reason that we kind of went down this line with an educational material, even though it's not complete, is that when you read the, not so much the statute, but when you read the regulations, it's very legalese, and it's necessary in order to get things done. However, if you don't know the background, it's really difficult to follow through and understand, as we found out yesterday. So through this process, we hope to give additional guiding material, both in the form of an introduction and explanation of why we're here. We shouldn't have to be, but that's the way it is. And if we want to continue to compound, we've got to play by the rules. And our attempt is to make those rules as efficient as we can. So what the MDC has proposing is that you approve this part of the material so it can go forward and explain what is on the books right now.
Thank you. Tara.
Just to note that what's in the meeting materials, I think it's page 3 of the guidance document. It shows that item 3 under definitions, that was tabletop compounding. That's what the MDC reviewed, and we had some concerns, and the memo does a good job of explaining why we've removed item 3 here. And so I'm just making a note that items, as you see it, 4 and 5 would be renumbered 3 and 4.
Oh, I see. Okay. Thank you. Now, do we have questions and discussion from the board members? And hopefully people have read through the materials. Dr. Noland.
Well, I confess I read through the materials, but I'm still a little uncertain. And I guess I would ask Dr. Sullivan, because I think he was a member of the subcommittee, to clarify for me, because there, I think it was, I'm trying to find the page where you make a statement about this, about the statement that it's on page 2 at the top of the second paragraph, where you said that the subcommittee believes these numbers are necessary. And by numbers, I'm assuming you mean the formula documentation for individual preparations and prescription numbers. Is that not already in the law, or is that something that we should add to the law or to the guidelines, but it's not necessarily clear in the actual regulation? Does that make sense?
Yes, and that's what we were working on yesterday. So what we're working on is to amend the regulations to include those items, so there's a paper trail from the time the formula is made till it gets to either office stock or to the dispense to the client. So what happened is that once we started working on this, we found out that there were a number of gaps in the regulations, and that's what we're addressing right now. The reason I'm hedging a little bit here is that there's a couple of different avenues that we can go after the discussion of yesterday. One could be pretty simple and straightforward if we can address the legal concerns. The other is to put forward another example of a flow chart that facilitates all of those items that you see in the middle of page 2. So once you have the formula, master formula made, that's a given and that's fixed. And that example you have on page 8. Mm-hmm. The form is on page 8, and then some examples are on 9 and 10. So that needs to be developed at some point by every practice that's compounding. Not exactly in that form, but this is an example. So then how do we get from that formula to the office stock or dispensed medication? That's what we're working on. I'm rethinking the question that you brought up, whether we need to have all of that itemized. If we do, it's going to be in a flow chart. I've already got an example of it, but it wasn't on the agenda for today. But I'm hoping that we can make it even more efficient than that. And of course, the other thing we're working on is the verbiage for exempting intravenous fluids, which I think we can cover the majority of that with the term immediate use, defining that. So that's what we're working on. My feeling yesterday at the end of the day was to hold off on putting this forward. But my arm was twisted this morning that there's a feeling that we need to get something out there to explain where we're at this point with the regulations we already have.
Great, thank you. That helps.
And I understand. I was at the meeting yesterday, and I thought I knew what was going on. And then I was more confused after the discussion. So I agree. We probably do need to put things out because it is what's in effect right now. But I definitely want to make sure whatever we put out is clear and correct and helpful to practitioners. So that's why I'm just watching the discussion here because I was more confused after yesterday, so.
Yeah, and I have no problem putting out what we have because there is an introduction and an explanation of why we have to do this. And then the formula page, the master formula form or the form, whatever we end up calling it, is just an example. But I think once you look at it, you say, oh, that's not too hard. Because clinics, have a limited number of products, preparations that they're compounding. It's not, I don't think it's going to be 120. I think in our clinic, it's probably going to be 10 or 12. Other clinics, it may be, more than that, especially specialty hospitals. But once they're written, that's the menu, that's the formula. And it's how we get it from there to how it's the end use is the we don't want to duplicate things. We want to make it as efficient as possible.
Right, and I appreciate all the work that the MDC did to come to this point because it's extensive. Any questions by the board? And when we don't have a motion, you're asking for a motion.
Yeah, we're asking for a motion to approve the guidance on veterinary drug compounding and courtesy compounded drug preparation formula form for posting on the board's website and dissemination to all licensees and stakeholders.
Thank you. Dr. Bradbury.
I guess I'm concerned that we're not even clear on what we're doing here. So putting that on the website, is that going to be helpful? It seems like everybody's confused in this room. So putting it on there is going to make it seem like this is I don't know. I'm worried about doing that.
Dr. Salcido.
Yes, I do have a question. Because looking at it, I feel like it's practical to have something that people can use now. And if we need to amend it in the future, should we see a need for it, we could also do that, right? So I think, approving the current form right now is at least something where we could start having a standard for people to follow. So I think there's a value to having this being posted.
Thank you. Jessica.
Yeah, so I think a lot of the confusion that happened were the proposed amendments from yesterday, not necessarily what's in existing law. And so that's where I think it would be helpful just to put something out while the MDC still works on the confusion that was occurring yesterday about the proposed amendments.
And I think it bears repeating that what we're talking about, I believe, is on page 5, 6, and 7 of this attachment, which is the introduction, basically, formula document, quality assurance program, which is what the law is, and the example of what a typical formula form might look like. That's correct, right? Which basically, when I read it, is what is current law. It links to the active regulations and chapters, and should be very helpful and informative to both staff and practitioners in the form it's at right now. And obviously, it doesn't preclude the MDC from continuing to revise things and reviewing it. Yeah, and I see Diana. Diana?
Thanks.
Can you hear? Good.
Yes. Yes, sorry, my internet is a little bit, I hope you all can hear me. And so I agree, I think it's.
Diana, could you, maybe speak closer to the computer? I don't know. It's breaking up a little.
7. Oh, attachment 1, page 6 and 7, the definitions, those are the definitions that the MDC is proposed to amend the current law, right?
I think those are current. That is, they're not changing that. That is what is in the law now, the definitions.
Okay, I guess I'm seeing differently, but.
I think they're just reiterating what's in 2090. They're just sort of detailing them out. Right, Dr. Sullivan? I'm just looking, okay.
Okay.
Is it that it on
I think this is helped
okay.
in providing guidance, and that we're okay.
Okay, well, thank you. Just raise your hand again if we didn't clarify it. Dr. Bradbury.
Okay, I understand now. I'm sorry, I'm a little tired. That you just want to post page 5, 6, 7, and then the examples for now. And if that's the case, then I agree with that. I'm sorry. I think I got hung up in the other confusion, so I'm on board.
All right, thank you. Anyone else on the board with questions before I go to the public?
We need a motion.
Oh, we don't have the actual motion. I apologize. So I'd like to see if anybody would like to make a motion to, where is my language here? Jessica, go right ahead.
A motion to approve the guidance on veterinary drug compounding and courtesy compounded drug preparation formula form for posting on the board's website and dissemination to all licensees and stakeholders.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
Second, and Dr. Bradbury seconds it. Okay, thank you, Ms. Laredo. All right, now, without any more discussion from the board, we'll open it to public comment in the room here before I go to. Seeing none in the room, so Dr. Moderator, God, I got to drink some more Diet Coke. Moderator, please open it to the public.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, please click the Q&A icon located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function. And it looks like I do have a request from Bonnie Lutz. Bonnie, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 15-second warning. I will request to unmute your microphone now.
Okay, I think I mentioned this at the last meeting. My only concern is you're calling it guidance. And I understand that that's what it's intended to be, but my experience has been that judges consider guidance issued by an agency such as the VMB to be law. And I don't know that that's really what you're intending. You're intending it to be clarification or assistance or recommendations or, I mean, Tara, I don't know what you think, if there's some other word we can use other than guidance, because I've had very bad experiences with judges determining that guidance by an agency is actually law. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment, public?
This is the moderator. Appears there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to turn it to Tara for clarification on the language.
I would say there's a difference between guidance and guidelines. And so an example is the board has disciplinary guidelines, which provide specific provisions and parameters for probationary terms and disciplinary actions. On the other hand, this is a guidance document. It completely reflects existing law, so we're not going beyond the scope of anything, and I don't think we're going beyond, we're providing too much interpretation. This really just compiles information in one document that we intend to be a little bit easier to read than the actual regulations. So I think guidance is likely fine. If this were guidelines, I'd be a lot more concerned, because I think that informs judges that this is what the board expects to be done. Whereas guidance, we're just trying to help you folks, and I can't think of any other term for this. That's my take.
Thank you. Jessica?
I just want to add to Tara's point. If that's the case, that's a guidance on veterinary drug compounding. What I recommend on bottom of page 5, it says these guidelines. Mm-hmm. I'd recommend changing it to this guidance.
That's a good point. Well, and I was thinking just clarification on veterinary drug compounding as the heading, because I take the point of judges on terms, but I understand that these are not guidelines. This is general guidance, but
also
it is
Tara's
a law.
point that it's not going outside of existing law.
Right.
So, I mean, it's reiterating existing law, so I don't see a specific concern that is in here that would get into that situation that Bonnie is worried about, because it's simply reiterating what's already there.
And you're suggesting changing the last line on page 5 to say this guidance provides discussion of some, with a plural of provides. All right. Any other discussion from the board? And we'll need an amended motion, probably, if we're going to change that. I'm looking around. I see no hands.
Just to clarify, because we have a motion from Ms. Laredo and a second by Dr. Bradbury. So if they agree with that amendment,
yes,
it would be as amended.
I agree with the amendment.
As do I.
Dr. Bradbury? Thank you. So again, the amendment is to say this guidance provides discussion of some but not all, blah, 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 at the very bottom of the page 5. All right. Are we ready for a vote? With that minor technical wording. Pardon? Do we need to take public comment on this minor? Okay, sorry about that. So we'll open this new amendment to public comment. And we're on the drug compounding. Dr. Miller, coming to the dais.
Grant Miller, CVMA. My comment is not about that minor amendment. I just have some questions here. The first question is, when was this posted online, this guidance document?
It's not posted.
No, when was it posted in the meeting materials online?
I believe on the
10 days ago, 2 weeks.
Was it like several days ago it was posted?
I think it was several
Okay.
days ago.
On the agenda.
So thank you for that. I just have some questions. So yesterday, when we discussed this in the MDC meeting, I was having trouble understanding what the record-keeping policies would be, and as we progressed through the conversation, it was evident that there was a formula document, which is like the master recipe book, but then there was also in that section F, or it was documentation about when you make this, who's making it, what's the expiration date, and then there were the labeling requirements. So essentially there's 3 things. As I look at this now on the phone, because I don't have it printed and now the phone's locked, I only see the master formula document in the guidance. Is there any guidance for the records that would be required when somebody's actually doing the procedure? So you had mentioned a flow chart. I think you mean a spreadsheet, right? That says, here's what we made, here's the person who made it, here's the expiration date. Would that be something that could be included in this guidance? Because my concern is if that's a real requirement per the regulations and we put out a guidance that only has the formula document, people they look at that and they say, well, that's what I have to do. And then they don't realize, well, geez, there's a whole nother section here that I have to do some more documentation. Because I only see 2 examples. I see a small animal example on here and a bovine example of the formula document, which is the recipe. But what about the documentation for when it's actually made? And forgive me, because I'm still working through my confusion from yesterday. Talking to some of the subcommittee members, it got a little bit more clear, but I might be completely off here because I'm still a little bit not sure of, what the regulations are actually, the proposed regulations are saying. So where am I missing something?
You're not. We're missing the regs to explain that second sheet.
Got it. So what we're doing is
section F.
Okay. So what we're doing is we're taking what's existing right now, we're putting together the guidance that we can, and then later it's going to be amended. That is of great concern to me. And it just, as you know, just as you do, I interface with the veterinary profession on regulatory compliance quite a bit. And human nature is to, when it's new, they go look at it and they never look at it again. They say, oh, this is what I have to do. Here's the guidance. There it is. And off I go. But if we're going to amend these regulations in some order that would require this additional documentation, I just worry. I think compliance is going to get really messy here. And my concern, of course, is that I don't want practitioners who are trying to do the right thing to end up in a enforcement issue because they thought that they had done the right thing based on the guidance. I get it. Regulations change all the time. We can only move with what we have. I just am concerned about this publication as is because we're looking at making additional changes. So does anyone have any thoughts on that? I respect what the board's trying to do, and I get it. It's a good publication as is. I just feel like it's going to be a real messy rollout for this entirely new thing now that we're doing, right, in the veterinary profession. This is brand new for us.
Jessica, you were looking at Mike.
I think we need to finish all public comment.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry,
I
Grant.
apologize.
Yeah,
It's not with germane to the motion at hand, but I'm just trying to make sure I've got it clear in my mind as to what the total picture of this is here. So, yep. All right. I'll stop.
Thank you. Anyone else in the room with a question, public comment before I turn to the moderator? All right, moderator, please open it up again to public comment.
This is the moderator, and at the direction of the board, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this item, you can use the Q&A feature located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, or use the raise hand function I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, and seeing none, would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you. Tara.
I thought that Dr. Miller's point that the guidance document doesn't advise practitioners about the animal medical record keeping requirements in existing CCR section 2092 subsection E. I think that's well taken, and the guidance right now does not actually say for each compounded drug preparation, the following information shall be recorded in the patient's medical record. I think perhaps to be complete, this guidance may need an additional section that, you know, about animal patient medical record that tells practitioners under 2092E for each compounded drug preparation, you must record the following information in the patient's medical record. I think we probably do need just that section right now because it is a requirement, and I think perhaps the guidance needs to be a little bit more complete, but it's pretty minor. If you wanted to add that section, we could probably revise the guidance and bring it back to the board in October just to, you know, massage that language and make sure it's appropriate and has the correct CCR section, cross-reference, and link. However, on the whole, I think the guidance document itself is necessary because although the MDC is reviewing the regulations for potential amendments, we don't know when that's going to go into effect. If, you know, it could take up to 2 years, as we all know. You know, it's a significant review process. So in the meantime, again, this whole guidance document is intended to provide information right now about the new drug compounding requirements. So I think the guidance document is important. It should go forward. But I do think that to get to Dr. Miller's point, we do need just a small section on the animal medical record documentation requirement.
Tara, since we're looking at just adding that small section quoting what existing law is, can we have the board approve it and then delegate that authority for us to add that section in there that just restates current law?
I think that's probably fine because this is just a guidance, just like FAQs. This is just a guidance document. This is not regulation. It's not proposed legislation. And the concept is to probably, if you're following along in the guidance document on page 2, maybe insert a new section 4 above quality assurance program that restates CCR Title 16, Section 2092, subsection E, that for all compounded drug preparations prepared for an animal patient, the following information shall be recorded in the patient's medical record. And right now, all that's required to be documented is the name or initials of the veterinarian. You can follow that. That's E1. The expiration date of the compounded drug preparation, directions for its storage and administration, name, amount, and strength of the compounded drug preparation, and date the drug preparation was compounded. That's all we're likely going to add under a new subsection 4 for animal patient medical record documentation. So, yeah, that would be an amendment to the guidance.
Jessica, do you have?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo Tara's concern about holding off, and I totally hear the concern about it causing confusion when the second amendment comes out, but we're not talking about a month or so later. We're talking about 2 to 3 years later And my concern is we're not going to have any guidance in that timeline, and I think that could do more harm. That's my concern. And I think it would be on us, on the board, when those amendments come out, to do a huge outreach on it and let everybody know that this is out there.
I mean, I tend to agree. This is in effect now, and I think it's our obligation and duty to provide some guidance, clarification, whatever we're calling it. Dr. Sullivan?
So where in the guidance itself are you adding that language?
And you're not adding it now.
Yeah, that's what we're hoping to do, is to add it now so we can post it.
Yeah, I'm talking about on page 2.
I know, but in the guidance, are you putting
in the guidance? Yeah. A new section 4.
Yeah.
So in the educational material that's going out, starting on
page 2, after section 3 formula document.
But that's
it's actually page 6.
Well, page 6 in the material.
6 in the materials.
Okay. It's going where?
After section 3 formula document. So a new section 4 would be inserted above quality assurance program.
I don't mean to interrupt. Can I make a suggestion, Tara?
I need it written.
If you look up at subsection 3 on page 6, the formula document, you refer specifically to 2092 subsection E in that second paragraph. So why wouldn't you just add it to that?
Oh, that's actually it. It just says in addition. So perhaps, I mean, to make it more clear for practitioners, maybe that gets its own section, so it's highlighted that, there's a formula document and there's an animal patient record. Whatever you want to do, as long as that instruction is in this guidance, I think that's complete. However, I missed it. Perhaps, in this quick review, perhaps it would be better for all practitioners to highlight it as its own section.
And can you repeat that, please?
So in section 3, formula document, second paragraph, lines 3 and 4, in addition, for each compounded drug preparation prepared for a patient, specific information shall be recorded in the animal patient's medical record. That could be new subsection 4, animal patient medical record documentation. And then a courtesy compounded drug preparation formula forward, that stays under section 3. But the new section 4, with that sentence that I read, that's currently under section 3, I think that consider including the actual information listed under 2092E that must be recorded in the animal patient medical record. You could just list it right there under new section 4.
That adds a whole bunch.
I would be more comfortable if we had this in writing somehow. I hate to say that.
Right.
Before I turn it, let me ask any other members of the board. Dr. Bradbury.
I know how quickly Tara can write things out, so I'm wondering if we can table that to the end and see if we can have the document in writing a bit later and then look at it.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, I could do that during the lunch break.
Because I understand the urgency, but I also want to make sure we're all straight on what we're voting on. And I know Dr. Miller's at the table again, since we're still sort of in public comment, right? Yeah, Dr. Miller?
My apologies.
No, that's fine.
At least this will be constructive. So that is actually a really good workaround to the concerns, because if you look at what has to be included, it's very similar to what's in the section F of the proposed regulations. And the idea is to habituate veterinarians to doing this in a way that's going to set them up for success. That's what I overall want to do, and that will do it. But I do agree that calling it out very clearly and saying there's a medical record obligation here, I think that's very important. The other thing is, in a guidance, you can use the words you want to use. You may opt to use the word should instead of may in that regard, so that veterinarians are very clear. You have to start recording this information when you're making these products. And it could be a spreadsheet, but it doesn't have to be a spreadsheet. It can be something that's recorded in the animal's medical record, and that would satisfy, in extrapolating F, in section F in the proposed regulations, it would satisfy it if it were in the animal's medical record. It would be very difficult to compile all that information, you know, in one clean place, but it would still habituate them into gathering that information and recording this expiration date, which is a new thing for veterinarians because we don't generally document the expiration date of something when we're, you know, prescribing a medication or dispensing a medication. We generally don't talk about that other than on the label. So I think that would work if it were that way, but I agree that some of the formatting and calling it out, I think, is a really good way to make this document more usable, and it would certainly help a lot, I think, in making it more clear.
Dr. Bradbury. Thank you, Dr. Miller. Dr. Bradbury?
Yeah, no, I didn't even realize until he said that. So paragraph 1 under item number 3, formula document, that last sentence where it says the formula document may be included in the premises policy and procedure manual. I think that's where he was saying instead of may, we could put should. And I like that addition or change because where else are they going to keep it? And it's saying that it shall be maintained, and I think it's it would be more direct. So I like that.
Thank you. Dr. Nolan.
I agree with that, but I would also add the should in the second paragraph. Sorry, let me go back. Where it says in the second sentence where it said may be kept in the animal's patient record, I would also add should there.
Thank you. And Tara, you have, and Dr. Sullivan,
the reason should is there, or let me read it again.
Is may.
May is because that's an exemption, or not an exemption, but that's when a formula is used rarely, let's say once a year, once every other year, then it's just as easy to put it in the medical records. You don't have to put it in the master formula. Okay, that's the purpose of that sentence.
Thank you. Tara.
The regulation says may.
Okay.
We do not want to go beyond may,
right,
and require it. So, you know, this would be changing may to shall, which is not in the regulation, and that, at that point, it becomes an underground regulation.
The bridge too far.
And that, you know, creates Bonnie Lutz's issue.
Got it.
So it's may in the regulation, it should be may in the guidance document.
And can I have you clarify, is that also in the first paragraph? Formula document may be included, is that also the so both mays need to stay? Is that your answer?
Can you tell me the reference section?
It's 2092 sub C. Well, it says the formula document may be included in the premises policies and procedures manual.
Confirmed, the regulation says may.
Yeah, so
okay.
The regulation says that you have to have a policy and procedures manual. So what we're saying is this formula, master formula, can be in that too. So you can have everything all in one document. That's what we were envisioning rather than having it all over the place.
So again, the recommendation is to, I'm just, for Dr. Bradbury, leave may in both paragraphs.
Because we want to leave it open. I mean, if somebody has a good computer system that they can put all of this in the computer, we don't want to restrict them to having to use a form that we're putting together.
And can I just,
Yeah.
so I just wanted to offer that, you know, compounding medications for humans, that's been my healthcare background. I would say that it's very complicated, it's very difficult to follow regulations. And so I appreciate Dr. Miller's comments, because if we are still working on a section of it, encouraging veterinarians to record to, I guess, the highest level while we still consider some exemption is good, because I'm worried because historically compounding medications gets very, very technical. So I'm a little concerned that, you know, adding confusion is not. I just appreciate Dr. Miller's comments.
Thank you. All right, so I'm thinking, okay, I'm not thinking, Tara?
So there was a request to see some language before the board votes. It's 12:11.
That's what I was thinking.
Sure. Do you want to?
Yeah, I was thinking we could recess for lunch right now before ending this report for the NDC. Sorry, Dr. Sullivan, it's taken a long time, but you had a big report. Recess for lunch, have Tara and Dr. Sullivan come back with final language to be considered for this particular item, and we'll do that right after lunch, and then we'll move on with the rest of the agenda. Is that, so right now it is 12:12. Let's recess for, lunch is here. What do we think, guys? 1 o'clock? So if everyone could come back at 1 o'clock, we'll continue the discussion. Thank you.